Hey guys, this is Sports with Dylan. We've had a lot more movement and more interesting movement in the coaching carousel in the past couple of days. I split this into two videos, so I've got what happened yesterday and then what happened today in two videos because both of these two guys I'm going to talk about for a bit longer than I did in the last video because I did not predict them, so it's a bit more interesting. So that means that it's going to take longer, and I know you guys don't want to watch like a 20-minute straight Sports with Dylan video. So hey, two 10-minute video todays, or something like that. Anyways. If you watched my last video, you would have heard me say there's always a couple surprises that come down the line, or something like that. I don't know exactly what I said, but something along that line. The fact that eventually there is always some surprise for a head coach that gets fired every year. And this year, we got that head coach. And it was not exactly what I expected, which is why it was a surprise. Mike Vrabel, the Tennessee Titans head coach, was fired. Now, this move, on the one hand, it looks pretty obvious. When you look at the fact that last year they went 7-10, this year they went 6-11. They've had struggling quarterback play these past couple of years, and it's not a great team overall. But then you look at what Mike Vrabel originally did. And then you start to wonder, wait, why did they do this? Originally, the Titans weren't that great. But then they hired Mike Vrabel, and everything got so much better for that team. They shot up in the rankings. They had some very good seasons where they made a playoff push, but they never quite got there. And I think, all in all, that is what took Mike Vrabel's job. The fact that, sure, they had some very good seasons and winning seasons, but they never got to the Super Bowl. And frankly, they weren't really even close. They did make it to the championship game one year where they were 9-7. They managed to beat the Patriots with Tom Brady in the first round. And then the 14-2 Ravens with the MVP winning Lamar Jackson in the second round. They just were not prepared for that game. But then lost to the Chiefs, who end up winning the Super Bowl in the semifinals. And since then, they just haven't had the same success. They did go 12-5 the next year. I think it was the next year. Maybe it was the year after. No, I think it was the... Anyways, they went 12-5 one year and actually won the conference. But when they came postseason, they just did not perform the same way. So, honestly, I think that is what had to cost Mike Vrabel his job. Because of the fact that they never truly made it. If they had made it to the Super Bowl, and especially if they had won it, he would still have a job. Because a couple losing seasons, but the ownership and the management will still faith in you. But when he never quite got there, that's what lost it. But, like I said, Mike Vrabel isn't exactly the kind of coach you'd expect to get fired like this. You see, Mike Vrabel is Dan Campbell 1.0. Mike Vrabel riles up his players. He's a former NFL player himself. He was always physical. He was always a good locker room presence. Like I said, Dan Campbell came after him and is pretty much the exact same thing, just inflated even more. But Mike Vrabel was a tough guy. He coached a tough, good team. So he's not the kind of guy that the message easily gets lost. He's not someone that just loses the locker room like that. And he's not someone that ever made terrible decisions. Sometimes I'd watch games with Brandon Staley, Josh McDaniels, those two namely, but you can go back further. Nathaniel Hackett's probably the worst one I've ever seen. But you'd watch games and the coaches were just making bad mistakes. And Mike Vrabel never did that. Mike Vrabel was always a good coach on the field and in the locker room. And then there's some coaches that just plainly are terrible with their teams, like Frank Reich this year, who just didn't work out. And Ron Rivera, both of them have had success as coaches, but they just didn't work out this year. But Mike Vrabel wasn't really quite that either, because the Titans, while they were bad, they weren't awful. They were expected to be about this way. And I honestly blame a bit of that on the management. The management did not seem to know what the heck to do this past offseason. On the one hand, yeah, they got rid of and traded a couple older players. And seemed like maybe they're leaning towards a bit more of a rebuild. And then they go and sign DeAndre Hopkins to a 2-year contract with a lot of money. But then they go and draft a quarterback in the second round. So I don't think anyone quite knew what the Titans were trying to do this offseason. It was weird. And that just clearly did not work out. But now we can see this team is going to need a rebuild, or at least a retool around Will Levis. Ryan Tannehill's going to go this offseason. Derrick Henry sounds like he's going to go this offseason. And this is going to be a very different team come September. That's for sure. And another reason that Mike Vrabel may have lost his job is partially because apparently there's a bit of a rift between him and the ownership. You see, last year, I made a video on it, the Titans GM, John Robinson, I think he stepped down, I don't exactly remember. I haven't watched that video for a year now. Anyways, he ended up leaving the organization. And instead of promoting someone already in the management, they found someone outside of it, someone outside the team, and hired him to be their GM. And it sounds like Mike Vrabel did not want that and was not happy with that. So maybe that's part of it too, just a bit of a rift. But I suspect Mike Vrabel will have more coming for him soon. Last year I said the Frank Reich hiring surprised me, which it did from the Panthers, because he just sucked with the Colts. But it's similar to Mike Vrabel in the fact that they both had success with their teams, and we both know they're knowledgeable guys, good coaches. They just fell down. The difference is I thought Frank Reich should have been much better with his team, while Mike Vrabel was more expected. But I think it's the same situation. I suspect Mike Vrabel will end up getting a head coaching job again this offseason. I think the best destination by far, which could prove to be very interesting, would be the New England Patriots. Now, this is on the condition, obviously, that Bill Belichick ends up leaving the organization, at least as the head coach. Mike Vrabel used to play in the NFL, as I said, and his last team was the New England Patriots. And it sounds like he still has connections with the organization, so it is possible that they consider hiring him. He'd also be a good presence, a good guy to pump up that locker room. He'd be almost the polar opposite to Bill Belichick, which sometimes is what teams need. The Commanders would be another team like that could use someone to pump things up a bit more, to bring this organization more success. Like Dan Campbell's done in Detroit, Washington could use the exact same thing. But we'll have to see where Mike Vrabel ends up going. I just highly suspect he will end up with a head coaching job this offseason. But we'll see. Maybe he'll take like an offensive coordinator job somewhere. Maybe New England if Bill Belichick stays. We'll have to see. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys again very soon.